and we see where we go from there.
Sick. Love it.
Henry or Erwan, who would like to begin?
I can go. I'll just say a few things,
Yeah.
but I think broadly there's a few updates. One is there are a bunch of some small protocol tweaks that are being drafted as part of a new UIP process, which is modeled after the Celestia process, which is modeled after the Ethereum process, which is modeled after the Python process, which comes from the line of open source. Yeah, so with that kind of process acknowledgement out of the way, there's some fun changes there. They're all pretty minor tweaks in terms of the code size, but they allow some potentially big increases in capability. So I was maybe going to hand off to Erwan to talk through the UIPs that have been written up and have a discussion about them with the community. And then there's also some pre-UIP forum ideas that are posted on the forum that after Erwan goes, I can share a little bit about those and get some feedback.
Yeah. So many familiar faces in the chat, or familiar usernames, which is awesome. Truly OGs. So like Henry said, we have a few draft UIPs in store. I'm trying to figure out which one is the best to start with, but we can start. Okay, I can share my screen. Penumbra update proposals. Is that the right screen? YOLO. I don't know if that's the right screen, but if it isn't, okay. 1 moment, please. Sorry. Cool. Yes. So like Henry said, this is the if you want to check out the UIPs that are published at the moment, it's on uips.penumbra.zone. That's the screen I'm sharing. The first one that's kind of fun is the spend back references, and Henry will be able to add a lot of color, and I think Finch is in the chat as well. Hi, Finch.
Oh, should we bring Finch up? They usually have so much to add from the community side, and I know they're working on something else that they could bring up later.
Thusly summoned.
Awesome.
So we can also happy to dig into the technical details and implementation strategies and different ramifications of the change, but I feel like it's better to start with the punchline here, which essentially we would like to make syncing faster, much faster. And to that end, there is a relatively small change to the protocol that we can make or suggest that will make syncing subject to actual clients taking advantage of it much faster. And the intuition behind the change is, instead of forcing client to only scan the chain forward, what if they could walk a specific user's transaction graph backwards and forwards? And this basically switches us from just like a sort of sequential forward only mode of scanning to one that not only like can work in both directions, but also can specifically walk the user's transaction graph, and so only pull in the information that is truly needed to reconstruct the private state. And I don't think we have like a maybe
There's
Henry, like,
there's a diagram, and I linked a
this is
tweet
big.
in the chat for the community calls. Maybe if we put that diagram up. Yeah, so um, here's kind of, if you right click, you can do like view image, and then it'll be slightly bigger.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of a like schematic of like how some Penumbra transactions work. So if we look at the one that's in the middle, this is our like TX0, and Penumbra is like based around shielded notes, which you can think of as being kind of like UTXOs, but that word has a lot of like Bitcoin baggage so it's like not exactly the same properties as a UTXO, but basically UTXOs. And every transaction is going to spend certain notes and then produce other notes as outputs. And the magic of Penumbra is that when you spend a note, unlike Bitcoin, where you actually identify, hey, here's this specific UTXO that I'm spending, on Penumbra, you actually just make a ZK proof of I am spending some shielded note, but not revealing which one it was. And that's where you get the transaction privacy and anonymity. And the idea is that because these notes are kind of privately linked together, like if there's a note that I receive as a transaction output, if I control that note, I can detect whether it was spent, but no one else can. That means that there is this sort of secret transaction graph of my outputs that I can inspect. And the idea of this scanning improvement is to use that transaction graph to kind of leap forward uh, along the user's own transactions rather than having to scan everything in kind of one linear scan.
Can I ask a question about that? I'm
Yeah.
curious. Just like I want to make sure I understand because that's really cool. So basically, it's like only scanning data relevant to the wallet holder or the wallet holder.
Yeah, so that's the idea, but when you try to do it in practice, there's problems. So
Okay.
and what the spend back references UIP does is it tweaks the protocol slightly in a way that eliminates effectively all of those problems. So
Mm.
let's do a case study, right? Suppose we have this TX0 and somehow our client has like detected this transaction. Now, we can look at the outputs from TX0 and we can say, okay, there's this output 3 that's controlled by someone else, so we're just going to ignore that from now on. And these other outputs, output 1 and 2, we can check, were those notes spent? And if they were, we can figure out which transaction spent the note. And then we can go download that transaction. And then we can do the same thing from those transactions, and we can walk all the way forward to here is some like currently live state of our account. The problem with that, though, is that you can only walk forwards. And so, depending on what your initial kind of seed transaction was for this scanning process, you might end up with like different subsets of your funds. And as a user experience, that like kind of is like I'm just imagining trying to explain that to like a user who's not like directed acyclic graph brained, and like that sucks. So what spend back references does is it allows a client to go both forwards and backwards. So given that TX0, we can walk forwards, but we could also walk backwards and recover the whole user's transaction history.
Yeah.
And this has some really interesting properties, right? Like one insight that we had thinking about scanning is the ideal way to scan is actually to start with the current chain tip and go backwards instead of going forwards from the beginning of time. And why is that? It's because as long as Penumbra continues to grow, which it will, then the average user who joins Penumbra is going to have activity like at the end of the chain history, not at the beginning. And so if we're trying to find like how do we find the user's first transaction to start this like graph history search process, we actually want to be able to go backwards in time, because if a user has like started using Penumbra and then they open a new device or something, like their transactions are probably going to be closer to now than closer to the beginning of the Penumbra Genesis. So once this change is in place, we can implement a kind of lightning sync algorithm that will do like a kind of a scan of everything until it finds the first piece of relevant data, and then it can recover the entire transaction history of that user, and then it can keep scanning all of the other data in the background in order to make sure that it didn't miss any. Like if I had sent you funds and then you never spent the funds, they would never get like linked into your transaction graph. And so that would, maybe that transfer would take longer to detect, but you could discover kind of your account state um, very fast.
Is there any sort of like vulnerability as a result of this? And if there's not, I'm assuming there's not, because you guys think about things. Why not?
There's a trade-off.
Okay.
And the trade-off is that when you do this process, you risk revealing to there's more of an issue around like network privacy, right? Because if I like find this first transaction TX0, and then I say like, oh, I want to query for like TX1, then maybe the node that I'm talking to could infer that those were related. But this is a very easy problem to solve, because if you just plug in a network anonymity layer like NIM or Tor, or just have even at the most basic level, if you're talking to like your own node, like you're totally guaranteed, or a trustworthy node. Um, so that part is like a solvable problem, but that's the trade-off.
Interesting. Fascinating.
Sorry, I'm a bit sick from the plane, but
That's okay. Planes are horrible. That's fast. So the trade-off, just so I understand it correctly, the trade-off is actually at the network level.
Because you need
And
RPCs
yeah.
to, like it kind of singles you out in a sense.
Mhm.
But if the
So is this,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go on, go on, go on, go on, go
No,
on.
I was saying like if the node doesn't know who it's replying to, or if there's like I don't know, like chaff queries, or if you have like if you can evade the assumption that you have um, uh, the RPC controlled by someone
Trusted.
who's listening,
Uh,
passive adversary, then you're good.
and also to clarify that the only thing that could possibly be leaked is the like um, sort of correlation of transaction hashes. So all of the amounts, the destinations, everything else,
that
that
can be.
remains totally shielded. Um, so basically the view is like having the UX improvement, and this is actually a kind of general point that I think is interesting to talk about. Um, with privacy, a lot of the times there's these kind of very kind of high dimensional trade-offs, right? Where you could imagine a privacy system that makes all of the trade-offs to make every individual action like as totally indistinguishable as possible, and optimizes for that at the expense of like user experience at every level, because like, oh, not leaking any information is the most important thing. But if you build a system like that, then what you actually end up with is no privacy, because it's like, okay, now I'm like indistinguishable from the 8 other users of this system that no one wants to use because it's horrible.
Mhm.
Whereas if you build something that actually works for users, um, then all of a sudden now you have an anonymity set. And so a lot of the work that we do from a protocol design perspective is how do you like identify and then bend those trade-offs?
So a lot of it has to do with the trade-offs of I'm trying to make sure I understand it. Like not necessarily RPC vulnerability, but rather like RPC trust in some ways.
It's like someone like monitoring network traffic to the RPC.
Okay,
But
well, so
but you
I
can
I
solve
have a
that
question.
with NIM or Tor.
Yes, you can solve it
Or
with
Yes.
NIM.
running your own full node like an aristocrat, and you should change
Yeah,
like
yeah. Everyone should be running their own full nodes. This is a Penumbra like Radiant Commons level announcement. You should be running your own full node. Please do that. I'm kidding. That's so far. I'm not even doing that. So,
But actually,
but
we did. No, I mean
ideally,
to
you should
give.
do it.
No. Like I'm serious about this. That is something that I want to like. It's a meme to like run your own node, but I actually feel very proud of the work that went into making Penumbra nodes like as easy as possible to run.
Yeah.
Like I think that it is really cool that there's automatic HTTPS like just built into the node, and that it also bundles a front end. Like you can run a Penumbra node and it spins up an RPC that you can like connect your web wallet to with like one command. And that doesn't mean that like every single user of Penumbra has to do that. But again, with the like bending the trade-off curves or whatever, the easier it is to run nodes, the more nodes that you can have out there, that the less like horrible complicated infrastructure, like if running a node is so difficult and complicated that you need like a full team of like DevOps people, then like that's an actual human cost. Like those people have to get paid. And then
Yeah.
what happens? You have centralization. And so it's yes, it's a meme, but also it's a good example of how like at every kind of layer of the stack, you have to be bending the trade-offs towards the outcomes that you want. Because the trade-off will always exist, but you can change the shape of the curve through technology.
Mm, okay. Cool. So there is like there is a world in the future where like this is also like yeah, okay, I see the path. I see the critical path for success. And on top of that, it is really cool that like if people, it seems like there's some like user side agency that can also be involved in improving the privacy of it if you wanted to, which is why having partnerships with other privacy
Another
protocols is cool.
another thing there is that the network privacy is kind of ephemeral, but the
Yeah,
on-chain privacy is
yeah,
forever.
yeah,
Right? Like
yeah.
if your specific RPC node was like keeping logs and then it like, later somebody like finds the logs or something, right? That's like one thing. But the status quo of the entire rest of the ecosystem is everything is immutably on chain for everyone at all times. And so
right.
our mission is how do we change that? How do we solve privacy on chain? And if we don't solve that, then none of this means anything. So we have to prioritize building a user experience for using a private chain that is just as good as or better than using a transparent chain.
Yeah. Um, So I can give like a very quick like Radiant Commons response to this. We have like on Radiant Commons has been developing a relationship with NIM, and so it's really cool to hear you all like mentioning it, because NIM is like very excited about Penumbra. Just to like let y'all know in this meeting, we met them in Bangkok, and so I'm kind of wondering if there's like some sort of like bundling like thing that can happen. Be like, here's your wallet, here's VPN, because NIM just released NIM VPN, or rather the beta. And everyone who's in this meeting, like all of the people in the audience, y'all should go check it out. It's wicked cool. It has like packet standardization using Sphinx packets. It's very demanding on your machine right now, just like the syncing for of the network was initially with the Prax wallet. Um, but they envision that going down. And the coolest thing about it is it's like homogeny of all packets going into a mixnet, in addition to like some level of noise traffic that's on the network at a constant rate, which means that the network just kind of looks like that like one constant stream of noise. which then, like, again, right? Like, if there's any sort of like network level or transfer layer level vulnerability, it solves that. It's like a better, it is a better VPN, and it's powered by crypto, which is really cool. I just want to shill that because I really like that team. So I'm really glad that the Penumbra Labs team just brought that up. So everyone who's in the audience, y'all should go check that out because it's awesome, and we really like NIM a lot.
I think that was just the first UIP that you wanted to discuss. Did you
Yeah.
want to hear from
Yeah.
the audience? Does anyone have questions? You can raise your hand. If not, we'll move on to the next.
I had my questions already answered, which is great.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's wait a bit more questions, maybe. Um, Also, critically, like, I don't know if it's known to everyone, but the span and outputs in concrete terms, they're basically the notes or the coins that are in your wallet that you want to spend. And so that's why detecting them is kind of the name of the game. It's because this is what lets you then. It's kind of like if you look in your purse and like you're looking for coins and you don't find them, that's problematic. But the rate at which you find them is also a pretty big user experience. And if it was very slow, you would probably not have a purse and you would just, keep things in your pocket or something.
I do actually have a question, an additional one. Could I ask here? So if this improves sync speed overall, is this also something that could improve in the hypothetical scenario in which there is a mobile version of Prax? Could it improve the sync rate for a mobile version of Prax?
Uh, yeah, sort of, but also kind of counterintuitively, we're actually expecting that the mobile performance will just be like 10x better than desktop.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something worth expanding in a second.
Basically, all of I mean, the answer is like simple and also annoying, which is that to make Prax on Chrome work, probably at least like 50% of the effort that the team put in is like undoing the damage of like the Chrome team trying to kill all extensions. Like there's a whole like team at Google who are dedicated to like making extensions worse for everyone. And um, the great thing about like mobile is like you just don't have to deal with that. So we can take our Rust code and like just put it in. Like if anybody has used Pickly, like Pickly syncs really fast. That's the way it should be. The slowdowns in Prax are because we're kind of like I don't even know what the right metaphor is, but it's like we're kind of like trying to like implement the software with like our hands tied behind our back and like like poking the keyboard with the nose or something. Like uh so one reason that I'm excited about mobile is just like not having to deal with that.
That's awesome. It's really exciting, actually.
Well, um, the next UIP that yeah, go ahead, Park.
Was that UIP4?
That's UIP4, yeah.
Nice. Did we ever mention I saw that y'all have the UIP repository. Do we have you ever mentioned that or like that's been put together? Like, have we ever mentioned that on a call? I don't think we have.
I think it was just after the last call, so no.
Okay, so maybe that's worth pulling up while we're going through these, or one.
Yeah.
Um,
So on uips.penumbra.zone, if you are curious about the details of the draft, you can select the different UIPs. There's a few more that are on the forums that are just being discussed. And yeah, UIP4, I'll just put it in chat. Oh, this one is fun. Outbound packet forwarding middleware support. Um, can you still see my screen, by the way?
yeah, we can.
Oh,
Maybe make your font bigger. That'd be helpful.
yep.
Yeah, nice. Thank you.
So this one is another pretty low hanging fruit in terms of protocol change surface, but that is very nice. So for context, you have the Internet of Blockchains. You bridge assets, transfer assets from one chain to another. Each asset has an originating chain, and in some cases, you can end up, for example, with assets that were issued on, say, like Noble, um, that were transferred on Osmosis and end up on Penumbra, and vice versa. You can have like Penumbra transferred on Osmosis that eventually gets transferred to, I don't know, like Neutron or DYDX or whatever. And those assets, even though they are at some level fungible, they all resolve to the same sort of like uh, um, abstract asset. They have conflicting representations, and in some cases that requires unwinding. So that means um, unwrapping the different layers that those assets have taken on as they were bridged. So for example, if you have Penumbra that goes onto DYDX and then ends up on Osmosis, and then you want to transfer it back to Penumbra, you technically have to do multiple hops in order to accomplish that. It's a lot easier when there's only one hop, but that's not always the case. And turns out there's adding that unwinding support is pretty easy for withdrawals from Penumbra. So for the unbound case, there's this UIP here that adds an ICS20 memo field, sorry, in which essentially like the clients can stuff a JSON, as I understand it, that will instruct. They can then be leveraged to actually do the unwinding on your behalf without you having to do anything. So if you have Noble that was transferred on Penumbra and you want to transfer it to a third chain, this could be very helpful because you will just have to do one transaction instead of manually going through the different hops and doing the unwinding yourself. Does that make sense at a high level? I can go into more details and like examples, but I think it's a pretty nice user experience unlock. The punchline is makes transfers a little more seamless and a little less hairy for those cases where you have an asset in your wallet that has traveled a lot across the interchain and just want to get back home. Well, can get home easily now. Well, somewhat easily.
I think I have to like process
UIP 5,
more,
by the
but
way,
I think
I
it is
just
really
posted
cool.
in chat.
What was that? I said I have to process it a little bit more, but I think it does seem really cool from the top level.
Basically, it allows integration of Penumbra with Skip.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's probably a better like high level summary.
Yeah.
It's like the like kind of the thing that makes skips like magic, like send anything to anywhere, like over the correct route, is PFM, and this unlocks that.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a great.
So for instance, right now when you go to the Penumbra UI and you try to like withdraw funds, it only allows you to withdraw to like the originating chain, because it can't do this kind of unwinding automatically. And if this change were deployed, then it would be possible to have something like the kind of unwind to arbitrary destination
Via Penumbra.
via the originating. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's great. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. This is UIP 5. Sick. Also, I just pinged someone over at MIM to see if they wanted to be invited to this call, and they said I can't make it, but I can drop some alpha really quick if you want. And their alpha was I'm trying to whack Pickley through some mixnet stuff I'm working on currently, hopefully in the next couple days. So apparently the NIM team wants to work on stuff.
Cool. Can you tell them to DM or something?
Yeah,
Because
I'll
we
let 'em
can
know.
share. Finch and I, like a year and a half, 2 years ago, tried to like run Pickley through Arty, the Tor thing, and like mostly got it working. Actually, it ended up being this horrible like database rewriting exercise for completely stupid reasons. But anyway, that didn't quite work, and then we got to the end of the time box. But we could share lessons learned.
I'm sure that they would really appreciate that. Cool. Next one. Do you want to talk about sex? Everyone?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Okay.
All good.
That one is a nice quality of life improvement for node operators. So when Penumbra -1 does a hard fork or an upgrade, um, you have to run typically, in some cases, a migration script. This is a way to add sort of like a safety net against running the wrong command, essentially trying to run a migration against uh, um, sorry, a migration that is targeting a certain state version against the wrong one. um, the annoying thing that can sometimes happen is if you are like quote unquote, like a little bit distracted, I guess. You can actually run the migration against that was meant for a different upgrade against your current version of the state, and because migrations actually alter the chain state, you then end up with essentially you then perform an invalid state transition, not the one that you had meant to do. And it's a very simple thing to fix. It's just saying, hey, this migration has been written for state version, you know, 10. You're currently running it for state version 9, and vice versa. Um, is that really what you want to do? And the answer is, of course, no, because I do not want to break my chain state. So instead of doing that, you are relieved and can, like actually download the right binary and do the migration and save probably half a day of work, and go back home. So that's the that's the UIP at a high level. I can dig into more details. Um, I think there are a few. Yes, Brendan. Sorry. I think there are a few people who do know to run nodes and validators in the chat, so they probably have a lot of color to add.
That's a really great quality of life improvement.
And to
Maybe
be fair, like it's not really like distracted. Like there's
yeah,
like I've heard about like many people doing it, and they're very competent and focused, and it's just like a sharp edge, objectively.
Yeah, you can just make the software not suck.
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
that's awesome.
So Um, this one, I think, I don't know that there's like that much to discuss. It's kind of a no-brainer. Like, what if we made the software not bad? What if we made it good instead of bad? But there's some other like kind of pre-UIP points that would be good to discuss with the community because they're a bit more substantial of changes. So maybe if I take over the screen sharing.
yeah.
Um,
Sounds good.
So one idea that I want to get some feedback and discussion on. Let me make this slightly wider. Um, is an idea for coming out of some of the previous community calls about how do we encourage validator and stake decentralization. Um, One idea for that is this idea called staking boost. And what this is, in short, is rather than kind of taking like, hey, here's 100% of the new issuance that goes to stakers, and it'll be distributed like pro rata by stake weight. this adds a new parameter that like takes some portion of the new staking issuance, and then at every epoch, at the end of every epoch, it distributes that portion to a randomly chosen validator with equal weighting. So instead of weighting by stake, it weights all validators equally. And so that basically acts as kind of a boost for small validators, because if you're like a solo staker for Penumbra and you have, you know, a small fraction of the total staking power, you have an equal chance of getting the boost as every other validator. And having it be this kind of like randomized boost, I think also is a lot more fun, and can, I guess, like help promote decentralization by providing people with more of a like economic incentive to be doing like solo staking for Penumbra, which is currently missing as part of the protocol.
Okay. Could you drop the link to this pre-UIP in the chat?
Yeah.
Right there. Sick. Ember, maybe we should like push this out to a bunch of the validators so they feel more stoked about it, because I like this. I think this is a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sick.
So I don't know. Does anybody have does anybody from the audience have comments, questions?
James, I mean, you're one of the validators. I'd be really curious to hear feedback from you if this is something that appeals to you as an operator, as well as like Finch, who's like literally, and Brendan, who are both all here. So.
And I think Archibald as well.
Oh yeah,
it's awesome.
Isn't Hibachi
I think it sounds pretty cool. I think I think it sounds like a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Sick. So I want to understand the edges of how it would work, but nice, very cool, very cool.
Yeah, so that's one. And then the other pre-UIP is, I'm actually just gonna do a ninja edit. So, and this ties in with something else that I assume is going to be discussed a bit later, which is like ongoing updates with the USDC issues. I mean, to just like front run the update there, like basically there's like a one-line change to like fix the bug that Circle did, but they have to go through their process, and that takes a while. And I personally am kind of like, well, maybe Penumbra should not be, you know, maybe Penumbra should not, in fact, be like kind of just waiting. And so one idea is to basically recognize like, look, Penumbra was designed so that like it just works with IBC. But if other IBC chains make really restrictive assumptions like, hey, every address is like 32 bytes long because like that's what the Cosmos SDK does, then that, which is how this breakage happened, it would be convenient if there was like some kind of escape hatch for Penumbra users to still be able to kind of break out. And so the idea here is like there's kind of a hack that we can do where every Penumbra wallet, or each Penumbra wallet, has like many different addresses. And there's a way that we can, and the reason that Penumbra addresses are longer is to have like kind of additional metadata that makes that work. So that, for instance, if I generate a new random address and then you send funds to it, when I get those funds, I can see like exactly what address that is. I don't have to keep this like giant spreadsheet of all the addresses I've ever made and like scan them all separately and whatever. It all just kind of like just works, except when other people put in restrictions. So the idea here is basically we can choose one of the 2 to the 128 different addresses that a user has and define it to be their transparent address, and come up with an encoding of that fits in 32 bytes, so it looks exactly like any other Cosmos address. And uh, and then this, it has some downsides, like each wallet only has like one of these addresses, so you can't have, if you do IBC transfers and they're to the same address, those become linkable. But at least having that option feels better than having things just be kind of stuck.
Okay. What would it take to is the idea here that you could have this set up in the eventuality or possibility that there is another situation like this where there's interdependence and the address length causes some sort of issue with a like one-off upgrade with a network?
Yes, and also if there were some like pretty trivial changes to the IBC withdrawal, you could make it so that when you initiate a withdrawal from Penumbra, it would use your transparent address as the sender, and that would allow people to work around the Noble bug until they fix it. So if this were included in a Penumbra chain upgrade, it would allow people who have USDC to just kind of withdraw it.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to read the pre-UIP to better understand it, like how it works from an implementation perspective, because like my first reaction is like transparent address bad, but like
Yeah, that was intentional.
okay.
As one of the comments in this is like, here, like, we should call this a transparent address, precisely because the user association will be like transparent address, like bad, I don't want to use it. Because the thing is that the way these addresses would work is actually it would deposit into Penumbra's shielded pool. So it's much more private than like a transparent address on like Namada or something, or Zcash or whatever. But from like having multiple address formats just sucks. Like users shouldn't have to think about that. And the only reason that we've had like these other address formats is to like work around other chains like problems. And so going forward, we don't want users to have to think about it. But if we call it transparent addresses, then if a user understands like, oh, activity that I do with it is like not as private, they're kind of wrong in that it's like probably more private than they think, but they're wrong in a direction that's safe. Whereas if you say like, hey, it's this like truncated address or it's this like weird other special thing, then like now somebody has to like try to
Figure out what
understand
that means.
that. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if you pick like transparent address, that's a word that already comes from like Zcash, from Namada. And even though Penumbra transparent addresses would be much more private, then if someone has the understanding of if I do something with this, it's maybe not as private as I want, that's like kind of correct.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes much more sense. So it's like pulling it out does sacrifice some level of privacy, but it's not like this massive amount, basically.
It specifically, the issue is with IBC transfers, where if you make multiple deposits, when you do an IBC transfer, you publish your address as part of the transfer. And so if you make multiple deposits to the same address, those would be linked to get like somebody could see, hey, these are 2 deposits to the same address. And normally the way that Penumbra fixes that is by generating a new IBC deposit address every time you do a transfer, totally automatically without you having to think about it. So like as a user, it just does the right thing. But if some other chain like breaks that behavior, this can be the workaround that users can choose, like I I still have to like get my shit done or whatever, and so I'll know what I'm getting into.
Okay. This also seems like a term issue, right? Like,
But
from a
the the point of
Right.
calling it that is to discourage people from using it, because the only reason we would do this is to work around other chains' broken behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't a feature we would want users to do or to use or to have to think about.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So it's yeah, it's like a deterrent feature. It's a feature, but it is mildly deterrent, and it fixes
Yes.
the issue with the address length. Okay, cool, very cool. That's very interesting. Um, I'm very curious about that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, Lab, so much for sharing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Please have a look. Please comment in the forum. It's really, really helpful to get feedback and thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and one other thing that is not yet a UIP, but let's see, where's the not yet a UIP, but a kind of interesting thing that has had some discussion on the forum is an idea for a token factory on Penumbra.
Oh yeah.
This would be pretty cool, I think, and you could check it out if you're interested. But uh, I think it would be possible to have a token factory set up that could handle sort of two different use cases for token issuance, right? So it seems like from a product perspective, there's kind of two categories. One is where there's a centralized issuer that wants to be able to do like burn and mint. Um, and the other is fair launch tokens. And one of the things that's really cool is there's actually, as described in the forum, there's a way that you could hook together the Penumbra DEX with um, the token factory mechanics so that you have a fair launch on a bonding curve. And because Penumbra's DEX is batched, unlike something like Solana, people couldn't front run the creation. Um, because everybody would be kind of like uh, participating in that bonding curve at equal like batch intervals. And then also you could do real world assets like
Yeah, like cigarettes on chain.
Sig Zone, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I gotta say is one of the funniest projects that I
It is definitely one of
visited.
the funniest projects.
Yeah.
I actually have some curiosity around that. Like, I know that was like created by someone who's over. Uh, I actually don't know the total roots. Is someone over at Celestia? Is that right?
I don't know. I think they're anonymous.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, in any case, I'm not sure who it was. Um, but still very cool. But my curiosity around it is, what would make it easy for people to like build things like Zone? Like, do you know what resources they use? I'm so curious.
Basically, it's just that you need a token factory. That's all.
Yeah.
But I think that in terms of like, so okay, there's like funny joke projects, and there's like, okay, what is the actually useful thing? I think
Right.
that the like fair launch token meta is actually much better to aim at. It has a lot more PMF, and also it's something where the unique capabilities of the Penumbra DEX are more useful.
Yeah, I think it took off because things were like I guess I think it took off because things got like a little bit more equitable, and I think if you push the slider on fairness and like you build a system that is truly like hyper fair, then you're gonna see people like just, and of course like you didn't, like if there are interfaces to it, then I think like people are just gonna like take it and run with it and do like really awesome stuff.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's very exciting.
Because the
Very,
previous meta was just like kind of scam coins
right.
and just like straight up like theft, and then
Hmm.
it doesn't work very well because no one likes that. um and the current generation of tokens are like more actually like, whatever you think about them, like at least um they've progressed on that axis, and not by much, but enough that there are considerable amount of attention on them.
Yeah, I wonder what it would take to build this. Like, how much time? Like, feels like a good, honest, exciting proposal to put together.
I think as a kind of prerequisite, we want the
Mhm.
decks to be more usable as a product. So
Yeah.
another thing that's been ongoing is there's been a lot of work by the front end team on building out a kind of advanced trading interface, hoping for that to be in a like alpha like testable mode within definitely like weeks, like before the end of the year. And that'll be really exciting because it has the capability to like see all the price charts and to do like market orders, limit orders to provide passive range liquidity. Um, and all of this is like front end changes. So those capabilities exist in the protocol, but they just haven't been exposed. And one of the other things that that's doing is the original Penumbra front end like was designed to be this kind of maximally decentralizable kind of static site. It's a thing that is embeddable into every full node, and the purpose of it is to ensure that no entity kind of has a choke point over users' access to the protocol. But now that that exists, like it's not that every other front end has to make all those trade-offs. And so with the Dex front end, like it has a back end that does indexing of all the chain data, and that's going to allow like a much better UI while still being like open source and self-hostable. It's just it's not like a static site, so it's a kind of a different point on that trade-off curve. But the UI improvements are really substantial, and I'm very excited to um, be able to like let people in the community play with it. I mean, the code is open source, so if you run a if you poke around on GitHub, you can find it, but it's kind of a pain to set up at the moment because
Oh,
it hasn't been polished. But when someone sets up it, there's a few sort of pieces of the user flows that are not quite ready. Um, but as those are completed, um, and there's a kind of alpha deployment setup, I'm really excited to get feedback from the community about.
I'd be more than glad to have Radiant engage with like hosting sort of a dev version of that. Is that something you'd be interested in us doing?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Yeah. I will jump off of this.
Yeah,
I can just get the repo from you. We can
yeah,
get to work on doing that. Maybe we can put it at like dex.penumbra.zone or something.
sounds great.
Kind of sick. That's awesome. And then that way people can look at it and we can just kind of iterate from there. That's very exciting. Okay. Well, we've like eaten up the entire time with PL side updates. That's pretty cool, actually,
Sorry
because that
about that.
means a bunch of shit happening. Don't worry about it. I learned so much today. I'm very excited about it. And there's a lot of those UIPs to dig into. Ember, do you think we should go over a little bit with some additional updates from our side? Because I think like there's a lot of satiation from their side. What do you think?
Henry says yes.
Well, I think Henry's responding to Void Runes
Oh, okay.
comments.
Yes.
um, yeah.
I
Okay.
can hear you.
Updates. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't realize it was.
No. It's fine. Um,
No,
did you want to go? You can go.
nope. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Yeah, updates from our side. On the basis of the fact that there was like some like basically we want to create like a better and more resilient relay architecture. Radiant Commons is engaging in trying to figure out how to like put together better relay programming. I think some of you probably have been outreached by Starling Cybernetics. We are working with them to see if we can make something more resilient come. And that's something that maybe I can turn to Finch to talk about more publicly to the people who are in here. I think some of you have already been outreached to, but in fact, I know that some of you have. but maybe worth bringing up. Finch, do you have any like top level thoughts you want to offer in that direction?
Sure. Hello. So yeah, I see a bunch of you in the chat who are also people that I have talked to, also people who I might like to talk to, who I haven't yet heard from. Yeah, basically right now, relaying on Penumbra is not as decentralized and redundant as we'd like it to be. We'd like there to be no single point of potential problems that might happen on any given IBC channel. Right now, Penumbra has open IBC channels to 6 different chains. Those are Noble, Celestia, Cosmos Hub, Osmosis, DYDX, and what am I missing? I know I enumerated this just a second ago to someone else that I was talking to. Henry, do you remember?
DYDX, Cosmos Hub, Osmosis, Noble, Celestia. This is
A
like
neutron. It was neutron.
We're trying to do like the 4 agreements here and just failing here. We're always forgetting the 4th agreement.
Yeah. So we'd like to.
It's a joke.
What's that?
Don't worry. I was gonna make a joke. I said soon we're not gonna be able to count all of them.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. But in order to even get there, we'd really like to have redundancy on the channels that currently exist, and then to build relaying support for channels that are to be created. What we'd like is interested parties in the community. We've heard from both validators and people who are not validators. Who are interested in running relayer infrastructure. Just to fill you in, if you aren't familiar with what that entails on what that means, when you do an IBC transfer, an ICS-20 transfer of funds between 2 different chains, you need somebody to pick up the state change on the network you're transferring out of and relay it to broadcast it to the network that you're going to move your funds to. And this is familiar to those of you who actually operate this infrastructure already, but figured I would start with the basics. Now, what this means is that they are effectively monitoring both chains that they're relaying between, and they are seeing, like, did you try to do an IBC transfer? All right, great. I'm going to submit a transaction on the counterparty chain that says this transfer happened. And so there's a back and forth handshake that transfers the funds between the chains. So running a relayer means that you have consistent access to an RPC for both chains that you're relaying between. And you effectively run a bot that's called the relayer, which monitors for transactions going between those 2 chains. Most relayers run, as far as I understand, their own nodes for all the chains they relay between because they want to ensure consistency and uptime, and they don't want to trust third parties to that. So it's a bit infrastructure intensive, and that's one of the reasons that we want to put together an appealing program to incentivize people to participate in that activity. That program would be funded by the Institute of Applied Numismatics, colloquially the Penumbra Foundation. We are currently gathering feedback from interested community members to figure out what would make you be excited to do this. So if you want to render your input before even an initial program is drafted, please reach out to me. I'm Finch at starlingcyber.net. I'll put that in the chat. And I'm also plaidfinch.22 on Signal. I'll also put that in the chat. And I would be delighted to talk to you to understand what are you looking for from a potential Penumbra Relayer incentive program that would allow us to build out a really great decentralized community of people, making sure that Penumbra is connected up to the rest of the interchain and funds can be transferred easily and straightforwardly with as close to 100% uptime as possible. I also wanted to, in saying this, extend a huge thanks to Informal Systems, who has been maintaining the relayer infrastructure already for Penumbra since IBC was flipped on some months ago. They are, as I understand it, solely responsible for keeping that IBC infrastructure up and running. And they've been doing so pro bono so far. So we're extremely thankful to all of the hard engineering work that they've been doing. Sometimes, waking up late at night when something needs attention. So many thanks to Informal Systems for helping Penumbra to become even what it is today.
Yeah, I
Looking
think
forward to working with them
they got
going
the
forward.
network. They got the network like stepping forward from the beginning, and now it's time to kind of expand the set, try to get a lot more people operating relayers. And what this specifically means,
Precisely.
and this is the part that I think is really exciting to have everyone understand, is a relayer program. If we design it correctly, and it's something that like is accepted and implemented, means that those 6 networks we mentioned are going to be a much longer list with a lot more resilience, run by a whole bunch more community members. I'm super excited about this specifically because I like when you've been in this for a while, like when you've been like working in and around Penumbra for a while, you forget how cool it is that so many pieces of the stack have been so well decentralized. And you start like running through the like list of things that make it exciting. And I was like, oh yeah, like you know, it was necessary to launch the network with a set of community-led front ends, and it was necessary to launch the network with like a number of community-run RPCs, and that like made like it was really important to have this like initial stage where people were decentralizing the network by running like reliable front ends and RPCs. But then crucially, the reason for doing that was to like get a very decentralized set of providers. And and then now Penumbra Labs in the last like couple upgrades, like or like to Prax itself, have like kind of like obscured this really important step away. And but it still has the same qualities of decentralization that it did, right? Like it still has um, the initial input of ensuring that like it was decentralized at that level. So like now there's like with the relay program, the idea would be like trying to offer something comparable for specifically expanding the network's utility into other networks. So to me, that's pretty exciting. And not just relaying, but like also some potential other things that could be out there. So that's what I would expect coming forward. So thanks for going into that, Finch. I'm very excited to be working with you on that.
Yeah, I'm excited to be working with Radiant on that as well. And yeah, just to be clear about my role here, I'm just the coordinator. I am not the uh, guarantor of anything whatsoever. I'm
Yeah,
just volunteering on Radiant's behalf to collect feedback from the community so that we can put together something that
yeah.
is appealing to folks who want to participate.
As much as I wish I was an octopus, I'd rather hire one. So
I will use all my 8 arms.
yeah. Cool. Okay. So that was a big one to me. Um, and then outside of that, I'm sure y'all have seen like some continued work on socials that we've been putting in. That's in work with a marketing agency that we're still clipping along. We're like really solidifying a lot of the sort of approach that that Radiant wants to take with some marketing techniques. But I also really welcome feedback from the community of people who are out there in terms of like some more organic marketing approaches, because we want to get Penumbra like into people's eyes and ears, right? And having them understand what it is. So as much work as we can do as a GTM org, there's also like the organic growth of the community that I think is really important, and we welcome that feedback. We welcome that sort of insight. Um, yeah. So, what role do today's speakers occupy on the team? So, there are separate teams, right? Like Radiant Commons is one team. Starling Cybernetics is like a validator, and the reason that they're up on this call is because Radiant Commons works with them quite closely. And then there's Penumbra Labs, that is like the development organization. They run no infrastructure. They just design the software that is the network's running on. Um, And then there is also the foundation, which is not present in this call. But like in terms of like the work that we're doing, yeah, we're just like all kind of trying to get this network going. A bunch of the different validators are running. The Penumbra Labs team is running the software, or not running this. Penumbra Labs teams design the software. Sorry, and the set of validators are just running it. So that's kind of what we're doing. I hope that answers your question.
And a reminder to everybody that there are still something like 35 open validator slots, which means that for only 100 Penumbra or 100 you can become a validator on Penumbra right now, which is a pretty awesome opportunity for folks that are interested in getting more involved. Definitely feel free to reach out to me personally or to anybody at Radiant. We're happy to help you out however we can. And if you get stuck in the documentation in trying to do that, we would love to hear your feedback about what got you stuck, help you get unstuck, and then use that to improve the documentation for everybody so that it becomes even easier for folks to get started as validators and node operators.
Yeah. I mean, excitingly to me, like that, it's just really like shouting out that the barrier to entry is very, very low right now. And there can be any kind of like critiques about that fact, but the fact of the matter is like I'm stoked on how Penumbra launched. Like, there was just like a Genesis file created and a bunch of validators chose to pick it up. And like now the network's kind of existing and we're trying to like push it forward as a constellation of people who are like kind of observing this thing existing out among a bunch of connected validators. So there's a lot of opportunity to continue keeping this growing. And I really want to welcome people's sort of help on that front. So other updates on our side, Ember, I feel like maybe you can hint at some stuff that you're doing on the community side. You don't need to go into detail on it. They've been working really hard on this, and so I want to give them like a chance to hint at stuff coming, but without actually being specific to it. Is that okay with you?
Are you talking about things that rhyme with LycroGrants?
LycroGrants. Yeah, possibly some LycroGrants.
Yes, we
Yeah.
have things cooking in terms of projects where lots of folks in the community and on our teams are like, wouldn't it be great if we want to put some energy behind those things becoming reality, whether it's what you are dreaming up or what we are dreaming up. It is definitely time to support the community to enrich this space.
Yeah, very excited about that. Cool. Okay. Well, I don't have too many. We're like 12 minutes over. I don't have too many other additional updates. Like we've got a lot of um we have a lot of potential stuff coming up, but I don't want to talk about it until it's solidified. And but we do also there are also a lot of like community development things that I've been working on with Ember and that Radiant wants to propose to people who are on Discord already, in terms of community construction, and that's something that I think we could see coming together. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to bring up, Ember. I'm good for now.
As always,
And we can
watch
just
this space. There's always stuff brewing.
yeah. Huge thanks to the PL team for the amount that y'all brought up today. That was really cool. I'm very appreciative of you revealing all of that.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Choosing to.
Oh, that was awesome, and look forward to the next one.
Sick. See you next
Yay.
week.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
See
Bye.
ya.